Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Lena Gamble, and I am here to do our Q&A session on facts and myths about alternative medicine. Now, why do I get to do this? Well, the reason is because I want to. Number one, I really enjoy having the opportunity to connect with people worldwide, some in the room, some online, some I've never met, some I'm good friends with, right? That I get to explain and bring some information into context for people so that they can understand it easily and make excellent decisions on their own behalf regarding their own health and wellness. So, with that said, I'll give a little bit of a background. I am a family medicine physician by training, and I also have a PhD in molecular biology. And one of the things I love more than anything else is biology and the ability that we get to study it and learn more and more about the human body, how it works, how it functions in both health and disease, which gives us indications on how to treat it when we find ourselves sick or ill. So, we have multiple ways that we go about caring for sick patients, right? So, some of that looks like um, Western medicine and all the things that I learned in medical school here in the US, right? Some of the most amazing training you can get in the world regarding how to care for the human body in its field. So, what I have learned since graduating from medical school is that there are multiple fields or streams, ways of looking at the human body and caring for it. Several of them we didn't even touch on in medical school. So, in medical school, we are trained in what we term evidence based medicine. And that has brought us a very long way, us being humans, right? So, those of us who are inhabiting the earth right now, we get to benefit from all of the lessons learned, all of the studies done beforehand that have brought us to the level of medical knowledge that we have now. We are now living longer than we have in centuries past. And a lot of that has to do with the strides that have been made in various streams, but particularly the Western medical stream of caring for patients, right? We have huge implementations of the types of things that would save lives that we know about. For example, hand washing, right? Before hand washing came along, people were dying from infections and diseases that were transmitted from one person to another, literally by the practitioner who was caring for them without their knowledge, right? Um, People were passing things around in families and in communities and neighborhoods because they literally did not know that they should wash their hands. And so a lot of things have come along, right, since then. And that's a very simple example. But we've got many, many examples, right, of discovering insulin, things like discovering antibiotics, right? Discovering antivirals. Like there are many different examples of the leaps and bounds that we've made. And I typically like to bring it out to people by giving them examples or asking them questions. For example, when is the last time any of you have heard of anyone who died of pneumonia? Right? We don't typically have classmates who died of pneumonia and, a cousin or two who died, when they were little because they had pneumonia. Like, that's not a thing for our generation. Why? Because of the advances of Western medicine. And so a lot of times, I know that today's talk is going to be about alternative medicine and some other streams of approaching medical care. But I want to also point out that we're not throwing out Western medicine in our effort to add these other opportunities to care for patients uh, alongside what we do. Simply because for me, I look at patient care as extremely pragmatic, right? I want what works for the patient and what helps them to get better. And so I'm also now, because I'm taking more of a proactive wellness approach, I want what keeps my patient well, right? And so that necessitates for a lot of reasons that we look outside of Western medicine for a lot of reasons because it has pretty much been a responsive type of system. And so we take care of patients when they are sick. As a family medicine physician, I get an opportunity to care for patients before they get sick and to do a lot of screening types of programs that allow for us to catch diseases early on, which is the entire idea of preventive medicine, right? So those things do exist within the Western model of caring for patients. Today's talk is going to be on other types of ways that we can care for patients or help to maintain a state of health. Now, I'm going to talk about facts and myths. Why? Because there are lots and lots of misconceptions about how alternative medicine works, why it's used in some situations, why it's not in a lot of situations, especially with our Western medical approach. And so we'll get to talk about that. We'll talk a lot about evidence based medicine and what is the point of having evidence based medicine? Why does that even matter? And so let's jump into it. So I'm going to write up here at least my name so those who jump in online will know who we're listening to. I did take a look and I didn't see any questions posed. So unfortunately, I don't have any questions that I get to answer from the internet crowd for this lecture. But if you have questions during this talk, you're definitely welcome to post them, and I'll take a look at them and do my very best to get back to you with a response. Okay. So today's talk is about alternative medicine. And obviously, I am not a teacher, I'm a doctor, which is why I don't write so well on the whiteboard, despite how much I love it. So I will do my best to make it legible. That's the most I can offer. Okay. So here we are. Our talk on alternative medicine. Myth number one: everything that's natural is safe. Okay. So if we have an opportunity to take something that's all natural versus something that's, synthetic or sold by a pharmaceutical company, then we choose the all natural one because it's safe. Well, unfortunately, that's a thing that lots of people think. However, we have many, many, many examples of things that are all natural that are not necessarily safe for us, right? That's a really big myth that I'd like to address today. So that's why it's number one. Um, Not only are certain all natural things unsafe, for example, heroin, right? Not safe. There's a really big problem in our country, in the US, with abuse of heroin and how many deaths it's causing because it is an unsafe substance, right? So that's just an easy one, right? Cyanide, also unsafe. There are some types of mushrooms, right? A lot of people are using mushrooms these days. and those have lots of healing and medicinal properties. They're all natural, but there are some types of mushrooms that will kill you. That is just the truth. And so, just because something is natural doesn't mean it's safe. In what ways are people harming themselves? Right? One of my main concerns is safety, patient safety, making sure that people have enough education to make the kinds of decisions that will help them to maintain their own health and wellness. So, I'll give you an example here. For example, if you take kava and comfrey together, right, those can cause liver damage, right? Um, for example, if you take St. John's wort along with antidepressants or birth control pills or anticoagulants, right? They have an interaction that's actually dangerous. And so sometimes it's not the all natural substance itself. Sometimes it can be what else is being taken alongside that all natural substance. What if you take two all natural substances together that actually can cause harm to your body, right? That is a really big deal. So those are the kinds of things that we need to be paying attention to, not simply saying like, oh, I'm going to go take this handful of all natural supplements, or I'm going to take this one and I'm going to take this other one because I did my own research. Well, you may not know enough context to look into the interactions between the substances that you're taking. And so that's what I'm here for today, to help you to understand the myth that if it's all natural, it's safe. I want you to at least go another step and take a look at what interactions may be taking place simply because, as a result of these two medications or two all natural substances being in your body at the same time. Okay? That is a very big deal. Second myth that we can address here is that alternative therapies don't have side effects like pharmaceuticals do. Now, that is one interesting subject. I've actually done a lecture, a little short video on side effects and how we get the list of side effects for pharmaceuticals. And I'll explain that again now, just briefly, simply because I think it's relevant to this topic, and I don't want to just say, go watch the other video. I hate when people do that. So here's the information. If you wanted to study drug X, and you say, okay, I'm going to study drug X and I'm going to make sure that it becomes FDA approved and I follow all the rules that are required in order to bring this drug to market, then I need to study this drug in, let's just say, 100,000 patients. That's a lot. It might be 10,000, but we'll just say 100,000. Okay, so there's, if you think of any number of people, actually, let's go with a smaller number. Let's just go with 1,000, right? Can you think of 1,000 people right now and what kinds of symptoms, physical symptoms, they might display simply because they're alive? Okay, hold that in mind. And also think about this, the requirements that the FDA have for um, listing side effects are that, the patient group will take the medication. Can you sit on that side? Thank you. The patient group will take the medication, and within a 30-day period or whatever time period is required, they need to list every single symptom that they might have, every symptom that happens over that 30 days. Now, again, remember, we have a group of 1,000 people, and we're already holding in mind all of the kinds of physical symptoms they could possibly have. And now we're adding this drug to that, drug X, that we're wanting to bring to market and get approved. But we are required by law to list the side effects. So every single day, these people have to write down all symptoms that they could have. Somebody's going to have a headache. You have 1,000 people. Somebody will have a headache, right? Headache makes its way onto the list. Somebody's going to have a runny nose. Runny nose makes its way onto the list. Somebody's going to have a stomach ache, right? Somebody's going to have nausea. It doesn't matter if they're pregnant or not, but if they have nausea, nausea makes it onto the list, right? All of these things actually are required by law to be listed. This is why every single time you look up an actual drug that's been approved by the FDA, you'll see runny nose, insomnia. You'll see some people can't go to sleep, some people can't wake up. You'll see um, some people have diarrhea, some people have constipation. Literally, diarrhea and constipation on every list of the side effects. Why? Because you have this large group of people that then uh, have to list every single side effect. So that becomes a really big issue. Now, why does this matter? Because our supplements and our alternative medicines are not regulated by the FDA, which means nobody has to list all of the side effects of St. John's wort. So, how does anybody know what the side effects are? Now, if you ask me, that's actually more dangerous, not less. Like it's more helpful to know what the potential side effects are and what the potential interactions are than to not know what those could be, right? So, say for example, I want to take some milk thistle. Okay, I could potentially take some of that. I think we use that for. I'm new to this now. Don't crucify me if I'm wrong. I think we use that to support our immune system. I could be wrong, but so say I want to take this milk thistle. It's a great idea. It's all natural. It's organic. I found this wonderful group manufacturer, whoever is going to supply this. It's not FDA approved, so I hope what they say is in the bottle is what's actually in the bottle, right? We have to hope because there's no regulation of that. Um, but I start to take it and I have no idea that it interacts with, you know, this blood pressure medication I'm on, for example, or the birth control pills that I'm on, for example. Those kinds of interactions aren't listed for milk thistle. So just because side effects aren't listed doesn't mean that there aren't any. That's the concern. So pay attention to any information that you can find regarding the alternative therapies that you're wanting to use and how they may or may not be interacting with any other processes or medications or alternative supplements that you may be using as well. Okay, so that's number two. Welcome. We're just going over some myths of alternative medicine, and I've gone through two so far, and we've got just a few more to go through. Hey, I don't have my watch. Can you let me know when it's 1:45 so I can stop on time? I don't like to go over time. Okay, thank you. Let me know when it's 1:45 if you don't mind. Um, so we've got plenty of time. That's great because I've got a couple of pages here worth of myths that I'd like to continue to review. So, myth number three: there's no scientific research on alternative medicine. That that's definitely a myth. Not true. Not true. And the reality is there is some research. The question is the quality. So remember, I said I was trained in Western medicine and we practice evidence based medicine. Well, if there's research, there's evidence, right? And isn't all evidence the same? Obviously not. You can tell by the way I asked that question, right? Definitely not the same. Why does it matter what kind of research you do? Well, um, the quality of the research matters. For example, say I want to take some wonderful supplement and it's going to cure all my illnesses, including this little cough that just decided to jump up right now, right? And it's absolutely amazing. Well, there's going to be some amount of bias in the presentation. That's called sales. right? Somebody wants to sell me something and they're going to make their product look better than every other product. They're going to make it extremely attractive because that's how sales work and that's what it's supposed to do. But research is not sales, it's literally the opposite, right? The goal with research is literally to find the truth and to express that in a way that makes it accessible to people who are looking for that information. Excuse me. So, why does that matter? Say, for example, you need to get your car fixed and you want to go to a mechanic. And there are different ways to look at this, but would you trust the mechanic who comes out really bright and shiny advertisements? I can fix your car. That's no problem. I can fix it in an hour. We'll just make everything all nice, just like it's brand new. Okay, well, you've got that one person. That's fine. Next person, they say the exact same thing. They can fix your car, they can do it in an hour, make it just like it's brand new, but they've got the stamp of approval of like another mechanic. And that other mechanic says, I would trust this person with my car. Now, which mechanic would you trust the most? The one who just comes out with his own, this is what I have to say, or the one who comes out and says something, but also has the support of someone else in his field, right? That matters. So I say this is the equivalent of what we call evidence based medicine in the specific area of peer review. Okay? What is peer review? Peer review means that somebody else who knows your subject gives their stamp of approval of what you're saying. That's what peer review is. Okay? That matters a lot. I could tell you, for example, I know a fantastic mechanic. He's great. I think he could fix your car. You could take that with a really big grain of salt. Why? I'm a doctor. Do I know how to fix cars? I do not. Why would you take my opinion about who can fix cars and who can't? I could give you my testimony and say somebody fixed my car for me and they did a good job, but I can't necessarily say that this person is or is not a good mechanic just in general. I don't have the context or the um, the expertise to offer that kind of opinion. And so that's the difference that we need to be paying attention to when we look at data. Okay? When we look at data, for everyone who's out there doing your own research, which I think is fantastic, um, a bit of context around that is knowing which research is valid and which one isn't. And if you struggle a bit with it, that's okay. Um, AI can help. You can literally ask it, what's the most valid type of research? And it will tell you. And then you can look at this research that you're looking at, whatever printout or whatever support for whatever type of alternative medicine you have that you're looking into. And you can see if it matches the type of research that is the most trusted. And if it doesn't, then maybe you can make a decision based on the kind of information that you have. So my job isn't to tell you what's good or bad. My job is to give you the tools so that you can decide for yourself what's good or bad or what's helpful for you or not. Okay. Um, for example, let's give you a few examples on the variable quality um, of therapy for alternative medicines. So, for example, acupuncture, mindfulness, omega 3 supplementation, these all have hundreds of controlled studies, right? And some of them show some moderate benefit of these types of alternative medicines, right? Hundreds of controlled studies. That's very important, right? That increases our level of trust, our our understanding that these actually offer benefit and not just someone's opinion about whether they work or not, right? So, what are some others? Um, for example, homeopathy, detox foot baths. these consistently fail in high quality trials. The word there is consistently for both of these examples, right? So one consistently shows some benefit, one consistently fails. Why is that important? Because with research, if somebody comes and say they have, this one study that's great, not good evidence, right? One of the definitions of science is that it must be reproducible. So I have to not only be able to do an experiment and show the effectiveness, I have to submit that to um, the cohort of scientists all over the world. Someone else in a different country, at a different time, a different space, can repeat my experiment and get the same results. That's science. If all we could do is this one study and we could show it one time and nobody can ever repeat it, that's not science. Okay? So I want you to pay attention to that. Please don't play the video. Kind of ruin the video. All right. Let's um let's talk about the next myth. And if you have any questions, you're very welcome to ask because that's what we're here for. Question and answer. um so myth number 4. If Western medicine doesn't accept it, it must be suppressed by big pharma. Now we're getting into a whole lot of ideas and opinions and such. This gets very interesting. Now, people have beliefs about what's happening and what's not, and I am not even touching that. Here's what I am going to do. I'm going to give you some facts. So, the fact is, the barrier to alternative medicine being accepted in the Western medicine model, and I just told you the Western medicine model is evidence based, right? So, the barrier is evidence, not conspiracy. All right. Remember that the barrier to these alternative medicine options being accepted is evidence. We need to have evidence. For example, many natural compounds, like aspirin, right? Aspirin came from willow bark, right? That's all natural. This is where it came from, willow bark. Um, for example, metformin, which came from French lilac, right? These are all natural substances that have now made their way into Western medicine. Why? Their efficacy was proven. That's why. Now, are these really expensive medications that big pharma is just making a whole bunch of money on? No, they're inexpensive, right? Some of the cheapest medicine you can get, metformin, is $4 on the Walmart, $4 list. It's not expensive. It's been around for decades, probably since before I was born, right? Aspirin, aspirin's cheap as dirt. It's like 3 cents. I mean, so they're not making money on this. So I know that there's some ideas about this link between like, oh, if it doesn't make money, big pharma doesn't want to do it. Mm, there's got to be some amount of truth to that, which is why people keep leaning towards that. Every business is in the business of making money, and big pharma is no exception, right? So we're not saying that these people aren't wanting to make money. What we're saying is there must be evidence in order for these things to make their way into Western medicine. And so if we're not seeing certain alternative medicines, the latest fad, the latest idea, whoever thinks this is going to work or that's going to work, and that's nice. And they may have a fantastic example of how it worked. The question is, where's the evidence of efficacy? Is it repeatable? Can it be repeated by any scientist anywhere in the world? Right? Can we do that consistently for patients? For example, if you are, say, not even you personally, say your grandma was sick and you brought her to me, would you want me to use evidence-based medicine, or would you want me to say, well, I saw this thing on TikTok and it worked for this one guy, so I think we should try that? I mean, absolutely not, right? Like that is not a safe way to practice medicine. And so a lot of times um, there's kind of a rail against the evidence-based practice of medicine, but we've got to be careful because at the end of the day, when the rubber meets the road and you're the one who's sick or your loved one is the one who's sick, what you want is a practitioner who is practicing medicine in the safest, most proven way possible, right? So that is one of the things that we definitely want to take into account. Now, myth number 5, placebo effect, mean it doesn't work. Oh my. This is actually one of the most interesting ones. So I have always been a believer in the placebo effect. Um, it's called the placebo effect for a reason. Now I explain it for those who may not know what that means. It's the idea of, I think, probably a long time ago, because it's not legal for us to do this, but a long time ago, doctors were able to give people sugar pills, right? And people would get better. Well, a sugar pill, I mean, is not medicinal, right? There's no medicine in it. It's not used for anything other than low blood sugar. I suppose it's medicinal for that. But in general, it's a medication that has no medicinal qualities, or a look-alike to a medication that has no medicinal qualities at all, that is shown to actually be beneficial. And the last time I checked, that I didn't look it up before this lecture, but the last time I checked, the placebo effect works like 30% of the time. That's 1 out of 3 people. Why does this matter? Especially in light of the alternative medicine conversation that we're having now, right? What if some of these things I might never achieve the type of evidence of efficacy that would allow them to be brought into Western medicine because there isn't any. But what if they're still helping people? Then what? I say, if it's not dangerous, go for it. Because 1 out of 3 people are helped by the placebo effect. That means if you believe that it will help you and it won't harm you, I absolutely think you should do it. Absolutely. Because there is not any risk of loss or harm. Uh, and so, for sure, that's my personal opinion. I'm not representing anybody else here. So, yeah. So, I mean, even, I've said that to my patients. I've had this one gentleman came in one time, who just told me that, like, oh, his arm hurts, did x-rays on his arm, nothing's wrong, ultrasound, like we did all kinds of things on this guy just to evaluate, right? Physical exam, all the things, we did all the things, could not find anything wrong with this patient's arm. He told me that his arm got better when he used his inhaler. Now, as a physician and with everything that I know about physiology and pathology and how things work, that actually made zero sense to me. I could not figure, like, there's no pathway that I could recall from all my years of study that would link, whatever this arm pain was, which is similar to like tennis elbow type of thing, to using an inhaler. But because he said it worked for him and it wasn't harmful, I mean, it wasn't a steroid inhaler or anything. It didn't, it had minimal side effects. And I asked him, and he was not having any of those side effects. Absolutely, please continue to use your inhaler to make your arm feel better. I didn't tell him one thing. Why? Because why take that away? Right? It's the placebo effect. He believes that this is helpful and it's also not harmful. What am I going to just take away the inhaler and then his arm just still hurts? And I don't have anything that can fix his arm because I don't, like, just, it's okay. So I think that sometimes we go to the other extreme Well, if we can't prove it, and if we can't figure it out, and if we don't have the evidence, and if we don't have the studies, then it must not work. Well, that's the other end of the spectrum, and I don't think we should live there either. I think it's more helpful to figure out, okay, if it works for the patient and is not harmful, absolutely let them go for it. And so that placebo effect is literally what that's describing, right? Let's see if there's an example here. How about this for an example? Both acupuncture and sham acupuncture, which is placebo, sham, SHAM, sham just means placebo. Both acupuncture and sham acupuncture often show similar benefits in randomized trials. This suggests that much of the effect is neuropsychological. And that's wonderful. I think, like, to me, it is perfectly okay for you to feel better, regardless of the mechanism, if it's not harmful. Right. So that's the takeaway from that. Myth number 6: alternative medicine can cure cancer or chronic diseases. Mainstream medicine cannot. Now that's interesting. That's very interesting. Now, this gets us into some gray areas because there are people with very strong beliefs that, like, oh, the medical community is hiding things from us so we can stay sick. People can believe whatever they choose. It's a free world. We live in a free country. And so it is absolutely okay for people to hold that belief. Now, personally, that's illogical because the longer people stay alive, they're just going to get sick. That's just a thing that will happen. Nobody has to make you sick or keep you sick or force sickness upon you or any of that. If you live on this earth and you don't die, you will get sick at some point. So, again, people can have their beliefs. The concern here is whether or not there are alternative medicine cures for diseases that mainstream medicine cannot cure. Now, that's just a really big subject. I'm just going to jump in on the end that I'm most familiar with, which is cancer, right? So there are lots of people who are having lots of beliefs and ideas. Thank you. About cancer and how it works and whether or not this treatment can work and whether or not they should take ivermectin for it and all kinds of things. I can tell you what the research shows. Okay, that because again, we're evidence based, and there's no reason that evidence based can't apply to alternative medicine. Nobody says that it can't. So why don't we apply some evidence to this? I'll tell you this much: the danger with cancer, diabetes, neurodegenerative diseases, etc., from alternative therapy is delay of effective treatment. That's the danger, right? And we know that these types of diseases are best managed when you catch them early. So, what if you catch it early and you decide, I'm going to go and take this other thing that I heard about online and that worked for this one person, right? Um, okay. And you do that and it doesn't work. The issue is patients choosing alternative therapies had 2.5 times higher risk of death. That's the problem. That's the problem with that. I personally don't like my patients dying. So there's that. Does that mean that we cure every patient with cancer? Absolutely not. But there are things that we know about treatment that we don't necessarily know. There's things that we know about our Western medicine treatments that we don't know about alternative treatments. For example, every drug that I prescribe a patient, I can tell you the number needed to treat. We call it NNT, right? So, for example, um, we'll stick with cancer, right? I can have 10 patients that have the exact same type of cancer, that are at the same stage, etc. And I know that this specific chemotherapy, chemotherapy X, if I treat 4 patients with this X drug, 3 of the patients will respond. Is that perfect? No. But we know this going in. Like, we have the data and the information, the evidence, we have all of it, right? We know what dose to give them, how often to give it, all of these things. Now, the alternative medicine option that I saw in the Facebook group online, do they have a number needed to treat? Is it 3 out of 4? Is it 3 out of 10? Is it 3 out of 1,000? Nobody knows. That's the issue. So the issue is not whether or not you should try these different things and, like, oh, well, they just don't want to use it. Like, no, I want to use things that I know have have enough evidence to make a good decision to help my patients. That's the difference. So these are the types of things that we can pay attention to. So when we talk about evidence based, it's not that we don't want to use the alternative therapies. It's simply we want to have enough information, and I want you to have enough information to make a good decision, right? So that's the reason we're harping on this evidence based, etc. At this point, because it's not whether or not alternative medicine is good. It's not whether or not the alternative option worked for that other person. It could totally have worked for them. It could have worked for them simply because it's a great option and it works. It could have worked for them because of the placebo effect. How do we know which reason it worked? Right? That's why we need the research. That's why we need the evidence to help us to understand these things. So, last one, because I'm running out of time, which is fantastic, it's no problem. Last myth for today, myth number 7. You don't need to tell your doctor if you're using alternative treatments. Hmm. I bet you can you can figure out why that's a myth based on our previous conversation here today, right? So a lot of times our alternative medicine options will interact not only with each other, right, and can diminish the effectiveness of other alternative medicine options. They can interact with actual medications and diminish the effect or have some altering effect on the medications that you're taking. So telling your doctor what you're taking is absolutely very important. All right. So that is all we're going to review for today with our myths and facts about alternative medicine. Thank you for joining me here. I appreciate you joining me here. Now, if anyone has any questions, concerns, comments, etc., leave them in the chat and we'll discuss them. I'll address them actually. And that's it for today. Have a good one.